Share my screen. All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to the latest of our office hours for the 2023 to 2025 CAP. Back to my screen here. So this, I just want to let everyone know again that this session is being recorded and it'll be placed on our website for future use. I do have some information to share. We'll continue to kind of go through the format the way that we have, share some general updates, open it up for any questions. We'll have some topic-specific information as well, and then open it up for general questions. We're getting about to the end. It is January 4th, so Happy New Year to everyone. Hope everyone had a pleasant holiday season and getting back into the swing of things. So this is the last of the, I guess, planned office hours. So we had a date set aside, as you see here on the screen, for January 11th, if needed, if necessary. We're not planning on, at this point, that we don't have any more new information to share. It would just be an open session for those of you to be able to ask any questions or have your questions answered. But also, and as we'll see here on the next slide, we do have one more webinar set with our friends at HPIO, and that's set for the very next day on Thursday, January 12th. So if I am inclined, unless there's strong disagreement, I am inclined to cancel the January 11th office hour sessions because we have another hour the very next day to be able to ask your questions, and hopefully get all your questions answered that you may have for the CAP. I don't know that we need an hour back-to-back days. I'm always available to have conversations or trade some emails back and forth. So I am inclined to, unless there's some concerns, I am inclined to cancel, or at least not schedule, the January 11th, a week from today, but we will keep January 12th on the books with our friends at HPIO. Any concerns with that? Knowing that, again, we'll make ourselves available. I've already had a couple of conversations this morning, had a couple of conversations yesterday. So we will make ourselves available if and when, but I don't know that we need to bring everybody together next Wednesday, knowing specifically we have another date on Thursday to kind of do the same thing. But I will leave it up to the group. Any concerns with that? Feel free to speak up or put your thoughts in the chat. Okay, I'm not seeing any concerns. So for that, we will then, I will not schedule Wednesday, January 11th. We will keep the webinar scheduled for January 12th. Again, that will be recorded and placed on our website. So that will be the last formal get together of this group talking about the CAP. Along with that, I just sent an email out around 10:15-ish. So if you haven't seen it yet, please look for it. Included some resources in there. I included the 2 fact sheets, included the guidance document, the signature page, the updated inventory that HPIO helped us put together. So I emailed all of those out just to get those fresh on the top of your email. If you were like me, you just kind of search through email to find documentation, because then I also forget where I saved it on my computer and on the cloud. So I just have that available to me. So I sent all that information out to all the contact groups that we have for the CAP. So if you did not receive it around 10:15-ish this morning, please let me know, and I'll make sure you have those resources. Those are the ones, are the newest resources. We've had a couple of requests for the signature page over the last week or so, week and a half. So I sent that out as well. So we have the 2 updated fact sheets. We have the updated outcome indicator spreadsheet. We have the guidance document, and we also have the outcome indicator spreadsheet that we sent out as well. And if you're missing anything else, please let me know. We have the stuff available on our website, and I will also send it to you as well. Once I get this processed today, I will get this on our website as well and make sure that we do one more final review to make sure. So with that, if you didn't get that at 11, or excuse me, at 10:15, please let me know and we'll get that information available to you. I had a couple comments that we hadn't set the webinar date yet for the 12th. We'll send that session out this afternoon. I didn't want to schedule 2 back-to-back and then take one off and cause some confusion. So you will receive the invite for the January 12th webinar later this afternoon. I just wanted to hold off and not cause confusion with multiple invitations and potentially rescinding one. So you will receive that here soon. Okay. Next. Some clarification on capital planning. I've received a few questions over the last couple of weeks about where you put your capital funding planning information. That is not a required, it's not necessary to include that information anywhere in your cap. What we wanted to do was to kind of make sure that you are genuinely aware of your potential capital funding planning needs. If they are directly tied to some of the strategies that you hope to implement in the 2023 to 2025 cap. So we wanted you to kind of be able to think about that in parallel to your planning for your cap. Here soon, within the next month or so, the Office of Capital Planning and Management will be sending you out what you normally receive for your year's capital planning requests. So that information will still be coming from capital planning. That template will still remain the same. What we wanted you to do is just kind of get a head start on planning for potential capital funding needs through your cap process. So there isn't any place within the cap that is required to have capital planning information, capital funding planning information. If you do, if you want to provide that, there's opportunities in the narrative to do so. But there isn't any specific place within the cap itself that's going to ask you questions about capital funding needs moving into the next 2 years. So I just wanted to clarify that. It may not have been as clear as we had been talking about it. And we had Curtis with us maybe back in November, if I believe, to kind of talk through what that could look like. But I just wanted to reiterate and to make sure that that you are aware that there are no specific requirements to add that information to the cap. We received it. We have been receiving a couple of questions about that, so I just want to make sure that that was clear. The other thing that I want to talk about this morning is the annual progress report. We haven't really touched on this a lot. We had some information included in the guidance document, but we really hadn't taken a lot of time to walk through that. So at the end of the calendar year that is covered under the cap, boards will be required to report on the progress that was made on the priorities and the SMART objectives in the CAP plan. So this is your opportunity to provide us with progress to identify or inform us on the progress that you're making on your strategies, the progress that you're making on your indicators, and any changes that you may need to the CAP moving forward. So with that, the boards will also be able to update, change any strategies, target populations, or indicators. If you get through it for a year and decide, well, this really isn't going to tell us whether we're making any progress or not, you can change the indicator. Or you can say this strategy really isn't doing as much as we had hoped to, you can change the strategy. Or you say we wanted to expand or narrow the population that is being targeted for that specific strategy, you can change that as well. So it's an annual progress report, but it's also an update, opportunity to provide an update on anything that you would need to change to the CAP moving into the next year. So I wanted to make sure that was clear as well. It's reporting progress and then updating us on any changes that you need to make to this plan. Again, we want to make sure that that we stress that this plan isn't meant to be static. It is meant to be able to be flexible with the needs or the changing environment that you have within your board area. So we'll have opportunities for you to make any changes to your plan or update that information as necessary.
Hey, Chad, this is Phil Stone from Lucas County. Will we have to submit another survey when we update those strategies, or is your thinking that we just email you what we're changing and what we're measuring?
Yes. So no, you won't have to go through wholesale changes or to submit additional data. You can just update us on the strategies. We don't know what that's going to look like yet as far as that process. But yeah, we don't intend for you to be able to have to go back and then justify the change in that strategy. So these are the dates that the progress reports. Oops, the progress reports will be due. So for 2023, so for this year, the due date will be Thursday, February 15th of 2024. The progress report for 2024 will be due February 17th of 2025. And then the report for 2025 will be due February 16th of 2026. So it's the subsequent year. So it's mid-February after the calendar year in which that report will be due. And I'll talk a little bit more about the submission of that here in just a few minutes. So the boards will be asked to be providing updates on the information on each of the progress reports. So the outcome indicator, so the progress you're making on that, the update on your target. Have you met your target? Are you on the way to meeting your target, or are you below expectations on your target? And any additional information relative to the data collected or the progress on meeting the identified target. So we are in the process of identifying a platform that we'll be using for this. I think I talked about this in the last office hours. We're in the process of identifying a potential platform that we will use that will house all of your information as far as your strategies, your outcome indicators, the progress that you're making on that, and provide you with opportunities to include narrative on how well you are or not meeting expectations on the targets that you set. We haven't completed that process yet. We're still in the middle of scoring RFPs that we received. Hopefully we'll have that completed here within the next couple of weeks. Once that process is ready to go, we will spend some time here internally working through that, working with that vendor, becoming familiarized with that platform, how it works, what are the pros, what are the cons, moving forward with that. We are then anticipating for the second half of this year, mid-year to the second half of the year, training all of you on the use of that platform. To where by the time you go in February, you just enter in that information in that platform and say, this is it. So that's really kind of the long-term plan that we have right now for this progress report, is that you will go into the portal, you enter all your information there, you can see it, we can see it, and then that's it. I mean, there's no submission process like there is to submit the CAP. You'll just be providing updates in that portal as you have those updates available to you. And then you can also share that locally. So you will have access to that information as much as we will. You'll have access to the platform just as much as we will, and you can use that locally. You can hopefully, fingers crossed, be able to create reports and dashboards and charts and graphs that say, this is where we're at, this is where we're going, and this is where we need to be, and we're either on target or we're not. So that's our hope for this platform, is that it's available for you to use, it's available for you to educate your board and your stakeholders and your constituencies on how you're performing against the strategies and the outcomes that you identified. So you won't have to worry about that until at least summer, going into late summer, early fall. It's probably going to take us a few months to get acclimated to the system, get trained on the system, and then also be prepared to train all of you on that system. And then we take the second half of the year, the last 6 months, to get everyone access to it, to get everyone trained. And then by February, you're up and running and ready to go and able to use that portal. So that's our hope, that's our plan. But all this information will be included in there, and you just go in as you have it available to you and update it and use it for your use in your community as well. So any questions on the progress report?
Is the crisis service continuum report going to be included in the annual progress report?
That is our intention.
Okay.
We won't know exactly what that's going to look like until we find one, but yes, that's our intention. It may have its own separate place where that information lives, but that really just depends on the platform that we choose and how do we access that information. But yes, it will be included. Now, we've discussed this internally. We haven't had any sort of indication from leadership about the timeline of when that will be due. As far as, is it going to be the same February timeline that all the other data is going to be done, is going to be available to be then provided, or is that something that we have to do separately on a separate timeline? Knowing that the reason why we had to have you do it earlier is because of the General Assembly and their requirements for us to report on how those dollars were spent. That will be determined on really the budget and what that looks like. Does the General Assembly include some additional funding for crisis infrastructure work that would necessitate requirements to report at the end of the year? So that's kind of up in the air. That will be determined at a later date, but it is our intent that that will be included in that platform as well, the crisis data.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? I know this is very nebulous, but I mean, these are the general requirements that we're going to ask you to report on. We just don't have a tool to share it with you yet to say this is what it's going to look like. But stay tuned. The second half of 2023, we'll have that information available to you. Okay, so that is all the new information that I had available that I wanted to share this morning. I did reserve some time here to walk through the survey portal again. If you felt that was needed, or you had specific questions on what that portal looks like, how to enter in that information. I do have the portal open. I also have kind of the printout version of it as well. If you just want to talk about some specific questions that we can navigate to easily, I will kind of leave this up to the group if they have specific questions about the portal. But I'm willing to walk through it again. We can just bring it up as far as the printout and talk about specific questions and where this information is entered. I want to make sure that we use your time wisely, but I also don't want to be redundant and share information with you that's not needed. One thing I do want to point out, and we missed this. One of you caught it, and I want to make sure that we do touch on it here. So question 6 in the survey about mental health and addiction challenges. It said, adults, please consider each challenge listed regarding the need for your adult population. Choose major, moderate, or minimal for each of the challenges listed, and we have a list. This one right here, the very first one, mental health and substance use disorder conditions among adults overall. did not make the list here for the potential top 3 challenges. We missed it. I missed it. And it should have been on this list. So for those of you who need to have that as one of your top 3, my recommendation to fix this is to copy it, paste it right here into the other adult outcome, and then you hit next. What that'll do will again ask you to choose minimal, moderate, or major. It's not going to mess up the data for us. We'll make sure that it's accounted for, but it'll ask you to rate it again, and then it'll add this challenge to this list, I think right under problem gambling. And then you have the opportunity to choose that as your top 3. If that's not going to be in your top 3 list, you don't have to take that extra step. But my apologies that we missed it on this as far as including on the list. So again, if this needs to be one of your top 3, just highlight it, copy it, paste it here, answer the question again about the level of challenge, and then it'll be added down here to the list and you can choose it as the top 3. So I apologize for that oversight. One of you found it and said, hey, what do we do about this? And I didn't know that was an issue until it was brought up to me. I think it was yesterday, actually. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention as well. So does anyone need to see anything within the portal itself? Anything on any of the specific questions that are unclear to you that you want to touch on at this point?
Hey, Chad, I just wanted to make a note that we realized as we were copying and pasting from the Word template into the portal is that under the indicator or the challenges, the minimal, moderate, and major, it's in opposite order as the Word document. So just so people are aware.
Yeah, so that's a good point. That was brought up to us earlier as well, that I think it's on the template, it's major, moderate, minimal. So these 2 are switched. So yeah, so just be aware of that when you're filling in your dots and you're making your choices. And I had this question come up this morning that on that template specifically for this question, there's another column over here to choose your top 3 in the table. Again, we couldn't make that fit within this format, so that then becomes its own question. So in the tables on the templates where you're identified in another column, the 4th column to the right to ask you to choose the top 3, we had to separate that out. So that is now a separate question within the survey. But thank you for pointing that out again. These are reversed. And I will point out one other thing too, as far as a difference between the template and the survey platform, specifically when we're asking you to kind of fill out these blocks. Scroll down here until I find it. So in the table, you have the continuum down the left-hand side, and all of these are across the top. Just to make sure that I just reiterate this is that the categories are at the top, and then all the information relative to that priority is then down towards the bottom. So it's reversed on this table as well. And this was just kind of a space saver for us because we couldn't get that table translated into this platform. So I wanted to bring that to your attention as well. And another conversation that I had, so why I'm here. Another conversation that I had earlier this morning is, and we had a couple of email questions over the last couple of weeks as well with this about how these priorities were chosen. For those of you who are involved in the 2 previous ones, the 2 previous community plans, the department identified 18 different priorities. and those two special populations which are held over to this one. So those special populations are right here: pregnant women with substance use disorder and parents with substance use disorder and dependent children. So these are requirements of SAMHSA. Each of the boards should be providing services to these two specific populations per our requirements, the SAMHSA requirements for our SAPT and mental health block grants. Those are the two populations that each of the boards must be serving to be able to utilize those block grant dollars, and for us to be able to utilize the block grant dollars across the state. And as we talked about in the template, and it's easier to kind of show you on the template than it is here, but prevention, mental health treatment, SUD treatments, MAT, crisis services, harm reduction, and then recovery supports, that's the behavioral health continuum in Ohio. So the board should already be familiar with that. The board should already be identifying services to then meet that continuum. So these are different priorities than what they have been for at least the last two plans that I've been involved with. Those were very disparate priorities. You had your prevention priorities. You had priorities across different populations, such as older adults, homeless. There are a couple of other priorities in there as well, but there were 18 total. And we asked the boards to, how do you align with these 18 different priorities? And then also, how are you measuring that? This year, we really wanted to focus on the behavioral health continuum. So this should be something that the boards are already working towards, as far as providing services, identifying potential partners and stakeholders and contracted providers and so on and so forth. But you really should be planning around the continuum. That's where these priorities came from. So it's the continuum for prevention all the way to recovery supports, and then the two special populations. So that's how these priorities were identified. So I just wanted to make that clear as well, because we had a couple of different questions come in over the last couple of weeks. And I talked about it again this morning with another board. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear to where these came from and how these priorities were identified. Any other questions? Or anything that you saw that we missed, or some discrepancies that we again may have missed? We just again found another one yesterday. Please feel free to shout them out, and we'll make sure that we get them rectified. Okay, if not, that's all I had planned for today. So as always, I will leave this line open until noon for those of you who want to have a smaller group discussion about some of the questions that you may or may not have, or just seeking clarification, whatever it is that may be. I will leave this line open for the next half an hour or so. But I will, if there's last call for questions before I stop the recording. Okay. So thank you for kind of sticking with us throughout this process and all these office hours. And we do appreciate the feedback and the questions that you have had, and seeking clarifications on what we were anticipating or what we were hoping for as far as information. So we will not be scheduling one of these office hours for next Wednesday. We will be sending out the invitation for January 12th. For that last webinar with our friends over at HPIO. And again, we don't have any new information planned. I don't plan on providing any updates. We could provide some clarifications on some additional questions we received, but not from now and then. But that is an hour that is devoted to you and to answering any questions that you have on anything associated with the CAP. All right, folks, I hope everyone has a great rest of your day, a great rest of your week. Happy New Year. And then hopefully we will see you then on Thursday the 12th. Thank you.